How do you optimize your hiring process to hire the best talent for your organization at any level? So this is something that a lot of organizations maybe don't give as much thought to as they should. So what we're talking about is recruiting, talent acquisition, and the hiring process. So for 99% of companies, talent acquisition is actually the most valuable activity you have within your organization. A lot of times, HR and talent acquisition is thought of as a secondary or even third tier role within the organization. But the ability of your company to operate at a high level and to outcompete or just do very well in the marketplace is based on hiring the best talent for your organization. So it shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be something that you're spending a decent amount of time and effort as an organization to design the best hiring process you can to attract the best people. Um, and then the way you need to start to think about your hiring process is essentially you're building a sales funnel. So I think this is something that a lot of organizations can understand, including the C-suite. And so essentially your recruiting process is a sales funnel, but for attracting people to your organization. So that is understanding, how to establish that process and then get the most qualified candidates as possible through each step of that process. The goal, obviously, is to find the best people, to find them and then attract them and then hire them and retain them. And so that is all part of the hiring process and the post hiring process. So, one of the key aspects of hiring high quality individuals is understanding candidate experience. It's something that a lot of companies don't give a lot of thought to. So, candidate experience is just like, one thing that's really popular these days is user experience, right? A lot of organizations understand that. User experience is something that's built into software. It doesn't have to be software, but it's built into a lot of things. And so that is, how do people interact with my product, my website, whatever the case may be. Candidate experience is like that. And so candidate experience is, how do candidates that we're trying to consider for our organization perceive us, and how do they perceive the hiring process, and how does that reflect on us, and how does that affect our ability to attract the best quality candidates. And so that happens in a couple different ways. One is the hiring process and what kind of information that actively presents, and then what you're able to attract based off that. But also, you can have good organizations that have a bad hiring process, and that unfortunately reflects badly on that organization. And as a third party recruiter, there's been a lot of times in my career where I know a company really well, I know the hiring team, and I'm saying, listen, I know that this hiring process has been rough. There's been some challenges, there's been some delays, there's been some lack of information, but they really like you, and you'll really like working there if we can get you an offer and if you accept. So you don't want to be in that situation as a company. If you're doing that, it's an uphill battle. Um, so that you really want to consider your candidate experience throughout the process. And along with that, consider it a two-way process. So a lot of organizations, when they're hiring, they're just thinking, how can we evaluate these candidates? But you want them to be evaluating you in a positive light. So that's candidate experience, but then also like, what do we have to offer? So um, a lot of times with organizations, there's a mismatch between what a company wants and then what they're able to attract. And in order to be able to attract high quality candidates, you want to present well in the process. And you also want to make sure that it's going to be an actual fit and not just, hey, we got this person, and then you get them in the role and it's not a fit for whatever reason. So that is designing your hiring process, and also the just general culture of your organization, where you have a good culture and you are able to present that and present good, solid information about what the expectations are of the role and of the organization, and do that in a way that candidates feel bought in and they're interested in your organization. So you're selling them in an accurate way through the process and giving them the information they need while you're evaluating them. Yes, of course, you have to make sure that they're a good fit for your role and for your organization, but it's a two-way process. Speed, depending on the organization, uh, there, I have run across organizations that maybe move a little bit too quick for hiring, but that's not usually the case. The majority of times when you have concerns around speed, it's because organizations are moving much too slow for candidates, and one that can create bad candidate experience. But then the thing that's more likely with speed, and especially with moving too slow, is you're going to lose valuable candidates, right? So once this job market is definitely not a candidate market; it's more of a company market. But if you have candidates that already have a job and they start actively looking, they're generally only going to be in the market for a few weeks. So that's not always the case, but they almost certainly are interviewing with multiple companies, and so you run into time frame issues from other possible offers. And even in a company-driven market, not a candidate-driven market, high-quality candidates are mostly going to get multiple offers. And so if you move slow, if you drag your feet, you're going to lose candidates due to timing from other offers and just other life events. Things happen. Candidates change their mind. They end up becoming happier at their current organization, although I have thoughts on that. Usually if you're unhappy, then it's going to end up not working out long term. But they can change their mind and decide they want to stay. They can get a counter offer from the current organization. They can just have other life events that pop up. Whatever the case may be, candidates are on the market for a finite amount of time, especially high quality candidates. So you want to be cognizant of that. You don't want your interview process to draw out and become extremely long. You will lose candidates, especially high quality candidates, to that. You want to manage expectations through the process. This is valuable internally as well. So talking to the hiring team about what the process is going to be like, how long that's going to take, when your goals are as far as having somebody start, what each cycle of recruiting is going, how much time each cycle of recruiting is going to take, but then also managing those expectations with the candidates in the process. So this is giving them valuable information through the process on approximately how long you think each step's going to take, giving them feedback if they're still under consideration, or letting them know if they're eliminated. And that way they continue to stay engaged in the process. If you have a third-party recruiter, you can have them pass on some amount of information, possibly your internal recruiter if you have an internal recruiter or HR. They can pass on some amount of information like, hey, the hiring team's really interested in you. It's going to be another week or two before we can set up the next round of interviews. Hopefully it's not 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. But you want to try to keep them engaged, keep them informed throughout the process and manage expectations so they know what to expect. And then process improvement, right? So as you are going through your process, you want to look for bottlenecks and pitfalls in the process. So track metrics as far as time to hire, submittal to interview, submittal to offer, candidate withdrawals, new hire retention, how well people do on the job. You want to collect all that information and then iterate on your recruiting and your hiring process and improve those pieces. If you have things that are causing issues in your hiring process, you want to figure out why and then what you can do to change that in a way that you're still getting high quality candidates, but you're not having a fall off. You can't get past, right? So you have a bottleneck. You want to improve that. So you get to the end of a process, the end of a recruiting process, and you have multiple high quality candidates to hopefully be able to make an offer to. All right. The next sets of videos will cover particular pieces in the process. That's kind of a general overview. This is a series that's going to cover the hiring process, recruiting and talent acquisition for an organization, and how you can improve that process to get the best quality outcomes. Again, this is Matt Haver with Foundation Recruiting Consulting. Thanks.